Lisa had always believed that bad things happened to other people. She was one of those women who worked hard, paid her bills on time, and never asked anyone for help. At 28, she managed a small clothing store in the busy part of town. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to cover her rent and help her younger sister Amy with college expenses. Every morning, Lisa would wake up at 6, make coffee in her tiny kitchen, and look out the window of her second-floor apartment. She could see the bus stop where she caught the number 12 bus to work. Life was simple but good. She had her routines, her small circle of friends, and plans for the future. Amy was studying to become a nurse, and Lisa was proud of how smart her sister was. The trouble started on a Tuesday morning in March. Lisa arrived at work to find a sign on the door. The store was closing permanently. Her boss, Mr. Rodriguez, looked tired and sad as he explained that the big shopping mall down the street had taken away too many customers. He handed her a final paycheck and said he was sorry. 20 other employees stood around looking shocked. Some were crying. Lisa felt numb. That same week, Amy called from college with terrible news. She had been feeling sick for weeks, and doctors found something wrong with her heart. She needed surgery right away. The medical bills would be enormous, and Amy's student insurance wouldn't cover everything. Lisa promised her sister that she would find a way to pay for it. She had to. Amy was the only family she had left since their parents died in a car accident 3 years ago. Lisa spent days looking for another job. She filled out applications at every store, restaurant, and office she could find. But everywhere she went, people said the same thing. They weren't hiring right now. The economy was tough. Maybe she should try again next month. Each rejection felt like a punch to her stomach. Her savings account was getting smaller every day. The rent was due on the 1st of April. Lisa had been living in the same apartment for 3 years, and Mrs. Chen, her landlord, had always been kind to her. But business was business. When Lisa asked for more time to pay, Mrs. Chen shook her head sadly. She said she understood, but she had her own bills to pay. Lisa had 10 days to come up with the money or find somewhere else to live. Amy's surgery was scheduled for the middle of April. The hospital needed a deposit of $5,000 before they would operate. Lisa looked at her bank account. She had exactly $823 left. She had already sold her car to pay for Amy's medical tests. Now she was taking 3 buses to get anywhere. Every night, Lisa lay awake staring at the ceiling. She made lists of people she could ask for help, but the list was embarrassingly short. Her friends were struggling too. Some had lost their jobs, others had their own family problems. Lisa had always been the one helping others, not the one asking for help. She didn't even know how to do it. On April 10th, the eviction notice came. Lisa sat on her couch reading the official papers and felt her world crashing down around her. She had 72 hours to pack up her life and leave. The apartment that had been her safe haven for 3 years would belong to someone else. She looked around at her furniture, her books, her photos on the wall. Everything she had worked for was disappearing. The hardest part was calling Amy. Her sister was in the hospital preparing for surgery, scared and alone. Lisa tried to sound cheerful on the phone. She said everything was fine, that the money would be there when Amy needed it. But after hanging up, Lisa sat in her empty apartment and cried until she had no tears left. On moving day, Lisa packed everything she could carry into 2 old suitcases and a backpack. She gave away furniture to neighbors and donated clothes to charity. What she couldn't carry, she had to leave behind. The woman moving into her apartment seemed nice, but it hurt to watch someone else measuring the windows for new curtains. That first night on the street was the longest of Lisa's life. She sat on a bench in the park, her suitcases beside her, watching people walk by. Everyone seemed to have somewhere to go, someone waiting for them at home. Lisa had never felt so alone in her life. The spring air was cold, and she wrapped her jacket tighter around herself. She tried sleeping at the bus station, but security guards told her to move along. She tried the 24-hour diner, but they said she couldn't stay unless she kept ordering food. By morning, Lisa's money was even less, and she was exhausted. Her feet hurt from walking all night carrying her heavy bags. Finding the homeless shelter was both a relief and a shock. Lisa had driven past the building many times but never really thought about who lived there. Now she was standing in line, with dozens of other people waiting for a bed. Some looked like they had been on the streets for years. Others, like Lisa, still looked surprised to be there. The shelter could only keep people for 3 nights at a time. Then they had to leave and try to get back in the lottery for another bed. Lisa quickly learned that being homeless wasn't just about not having a house, it was about not having anywhere to put your things, nowhere to take a shower, nowhere to feel safe. It was about people looking through you like you weren't there. But Amy still needed that surgery, and Lisa was determined to find a way to save her sister's life, no matter what it cost her. 3 weeks had passed since Lisa lost her apartment, and every day felt like a year. The shelter had a strict policy. 3 nights, then you had to find somewhere else. She had learned to pack her belongings quickly and be ready to leave by 7 in the morning. Some nights she got lucky and found a bed. Other nights she walked the streets until sunrise, trying to stay safe and warm. The worst part wasn't sleeping on benches or eating from food banks. The worst part was the phone calls from Amy. Her sister's voice was getting weaker, and the doctor said they couldn't wait much longer for the surgery. The hospital's financial office called Lisa every day, asking about the deposit. Each time, Lisa promised the money was coming soon, but she was running out of time and options. Lisa had sold everything she could think of. Her grandmother's jewelry went to a pawn shop for $200. Her laptop, which she had saved up for months to buy, brought in another $150. She sold her nice work clothes to a consignment shop, keeping only the most basic items. Her wedding ring from her marriage that ended 2 years ago, even that went to pay for Amy's medication, but it still wasn't enough. Not even close. One evening, while sitting outside the public library trying to use their free internet, Lisa overheard 2 women talking. They were discussing someone they knew who made money by selling things online. Not regular things, personal, items that people wanted to buy from someone specific. Lisa pretended to read while listening to their conversation. The women talked about how desperate times called for creative solutions. That night, lying on a bench in the park, Lisa stared at the stars and thought about what she had heard. She had never imagined herself doing anything like that. But Amy needed the surgery within 2 weeks, or the doctor said it might be too late. Lisa looked down at the small bag, containing everything she owned in the world. Her clothes were really all she had left. The next morning, Lisa walked to the library and spent hours researching online. She learned about platforms where people sold various items to collectors. Some people bought clothes that had been worn by others. She read stories of women who had made enough money this way to pay rent or buy groceries. It seemed unreal, but the testimonials looked genuine. Lisa created an account using a fake name and a photo that didn't show her face. She wrote a simple description about being a young woman who needed to sell some of her personal belongings. Her hands shook as she typed. This wasn't who she thought she was. But Amy's life depended on her being willing to do whatever it took. The first sale was her favorite sweater. Someone bought it for $50. More money than Lisa had seen in weeks. The buyer sent kind messages saying they hoped she was okay and that they were happy to help. Lisa felt a strange mix of shame and relief. It was just a sweater, she told herself. People bought used clothes all the time. But the medical bills kept coming, and $50 barely made a dent. Lisa realized she would need to sell more valuable items to make the kind of money Amy needed. She began offering other pieces of clothing, shoes, even her winter coat. Each sale brought in a little more money, but also took away something she needed for basic survival. The strangest part was how kind some of the buyers were. They sent messages asking if she was eating enough, if she had a safe place to stay. Some sent extra money beyond what they agreed to pay, saying they wanted to help. Others shared their own stories of difficult times. Lisa began to understand that she wasn't the only person in the world facing impossible choices. But winter was coming, and Lisa had sold her warm clothes. She spent cold nights shivering on benches, wearing only a thin jacket she had found in a donation box. Her shoes had holes in them, and her feet were always wet and cold. She caught a bad cough that wouldn't go away, but she couldn't afford to see a doctor. Amy called less often now because talking made her tired. During their last conversation, Amy asked Lisa how she was getting the money for the medical bills. Lisa lied and said she had found work cleaning offices at night. Amy seemed relieved and said she was proud of how strong Lisa was. After hanging up, Lisa cried until her chest hurt. The hardest day came when Lisa realized she had sold almost everything except the clothes she was wearing. She sat in the park looking at her phone, seeing messages from buyers who wanted more items. The surgery was scheduled for the following week, and the hospital still needed $3,000. Lisa looked down at her last good outfit. A blue dress she had worn to job interviews, boots that still kept her feet dry, and a jacket that was her only protection against the cold. Standing in the public restroom later that evening, Lisa stared at herself in the cracked mirror. Her face looked thin and tired. Her hair needed washing. She barely recognized the person looking back at her. But somewhere in a hospital across town, Amy was counting on her big sister to save her life. Lisa whispered to her reflection, "All I have are my clothes." The words echoed in the empty restroom. She thought about Amy's smile, about the plans they had made for the future, about the promise she had made to their parents to always take care of her little sister. That night, Lisa made a decision that she knew would change everything. The decision Lisa made that night haunted her every waking moment. She had crossed a line she never thought she would cross, but Amy's surgery was only 5 days away, and the hospital wouldn't wait any longer. Lisa had managed to raise most of the money, but she still needed $800 more. Her last good outfit was gone now, sold to someone who promised to treasure it. All she had left were the basic clothes on her back and a growing sense that she was losing herself. Piece by piece, Lisa barely recognized the person she had become. 2 months ago, she was the woman who helped elderly customers find the perfect dress, who remembered regular shoppers' names, who always dressed professionally for work. Now she spent her days figuring out where to find food, where to sleep safely, and how to stay clean enough that people wouldn't immediately know she was homeless. The hardest part wasn't the hunger or the cold nights. It was the way people looked at her now. When she walked into stores, security guards followed her. When she sat on public benches, people moved away. Mothers pulled their children closer when she passed by. Lisa had become invisible in some ways and too visible in others. She was either ignored completely or stared at with disgust or pity. At the shelter, Lisa met other women who had stories similar to hers. There was Janet, a former teacher who lost everything when her husband left and took all their money. There was Rosa, who had been evicted after her son's medical bills bankrupted the family. Each woman had a breaking point, a moment when life pushed them further than they ever imagined they could go. Some of the women had been on the streets for years. They knew which restaurants threw away good food, which bathrooms stayed unlocked at night, which neighborhoods were safe for women alone. They taught Lisa survival skills she never wanted to learn: how to make a few dollars last all week, how to look busy so police wouldn't tell her to move along, how to sleep sitting up so she looked like she was just resting, not homeless. But the longer Lisa stayed on the streets, the more dangerous her situation became. Other homeless people weren't always friendly. Some had mental health problems that made them unpredictable. Others had addiction issues that made them desperate enough to steal from anyone, even someone who had nothing. Lisa learned to sleep with one eye open and to trust no one completely. The isolation was almost unbearable. Lisa had always been social, always had friends to call when she needed to talk. Now she spent entire days without having a real conversation with anyone. She talked to Amy on the phone when she could find somewhere quiet, but she had to pretend everything was fine. She couldn't let her sick sister worry about her. 3 days before Amy's surgery, Lisa got a call from the hospital's billing department. They needed the remaining money within 24 hours, or they would have to reschedule the operation. Amy's doctor had made it clear that waiting much longer could be fatal. Lisa's sister was getting weaker every day, and her heart was struggling to keep working. That night, sitting on a bench outside the hospital where Amy was staying, Lisa felt completely defeated. She could see her sister's window from where she sat, but she couldn't go inside looking the way she did. Amy thought Lisa was working and living normally. She had no idea that her big sister was homeless, desperate, and running out of options. Lisa watched people walking in and out of the hospital. Families visiting their loved ones, doctors and nurses heading home after long shifts, patients being discharged with flowers and balloons. Everyone seemed to belong somewhere, to have people who cared about them, to have normal problems with normal solutions. A security guard approached Lisa and asked if she needed help. He was kind but firm when he explained that she couldn't sleep on hospital property. Lisa nodded and gathered her few belongings. She walked slowly toward the downtown area, where she knew other homeless people gathered at night. Her feet hurt from walking in shoes that were falling apart, and her stomach was empty because she had spent her last few dollars on bus fare to get to the hospital. Downtown at night was a different world. Street lights created pools of yellow, light separated by dark shadows. Some areas buzzed with activity. Bars and restaurants stayed open late, and people dressed in nice clothes laughed and talked as they walked by. Other streets were empty, except for the occasional police car or delivery truck. Lisa found herself in areas of the city she had only driven through before, places where desperate people gathered after the sun went down. She saw things that shocked her, people doing whatever they had to do to survive another day. Women her age and younger, men who looked like they had once had good jobs, teenagers who should have been in school, all of them pushed to the edges of society, all of them invisible to the people living normal lives just a few blocks away. As Lisa walked through these streets, she realized she was becoming part of this world whether she wanted to or not. Each day on the streets changed her a little more. She was learning to think like someone with nothing to lose, someone who had to consider options that would have been unthinkable before. Standing under a broken streetlight at 2 in the morning, Lisa made another decision that would haunt her forever. Amy's life hung in the balance, and time was running out. The morning of Amy's surgery arrived like a storm cloud Lisa couldn't escape. She sat on a park bench at dawn, watching the city wake up around her. Business people hurried to catch buses, parents walked children to school, and life continued normally for everyone except her. In 6 hours, Amy would go into the operating room, and Lisa was still $300 short of what the hospital needed. Lisa's phone buzzed with a text from Amy. "Big sister, I'm scared about today, but I know everything will be okay because you've taken care of everything. I love you so much." Reading those words, Lisa felt her heart break into even smaller pieces. Amy trusted her completely, believed in her without question, and Lisa was about to let her down. She had spent the entire night walking through the city, trying to think of solutions that didn't exist. She had called every person she could think of, but her phone book was empty of people who could help with that kind of money. Most of her old friends had their own struggles, and she had been too proud to tell them how bad things had gotten for her. At 8 in the morning, Lisa found herself standing outside a community center she had passed many times during her weeks on the street. She had never gone inside because she wasn't ready to admit she needed that kind of help. But now, with time running out, she pushed open the heavy glass doors and stepped into the warm lobby. The woman at the front desk looked up with a genuine smile. She was probably in her 40s, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a name tag that said volunteer and a sweater that had seen better days. When she looked at Lisa, she didn't seem to see a homeless woman. She just saw another person who might need help. "Good morning," the woman said. "I'm Helen. How can we help you today?" Lisa stood there for a moment, not knowing how to begin. She had practiced this conversation in her head, but now the words wouldn't come. "How do you tell a stranger that your sister is dying and you've lost everything trying to save her?" "I don't really know," Lisa finally said. "My sister needs surgery today, and I'm still short on the money for it." Helen gestured toward a chair. "Why don't you sit down and tell me what's happening?" For the first time in months, Lisa sat across from someone who seemed to have time to listen. She told Helen about losing her job, about Amy's heart condition, about the eviction and the medical bills. She talked about selling everything she owned and still not having enough. The words poured out of her like water through a broken dam. Helen listened without judgment, asking gentle questions that helped Lisa tell her story. She didn't interrupt or offer quick solutions. She just listened, like Lisa's words mattered. Like Lisa mattered. "How much do you still need?" Helen asked when Lisa finished talking. $300, Lisa said. "The surgery is at 2 o'clock today." Helen was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then she stood up and walked to a bulletin board covered with flyers and announcements. She pulled down a business card and handed it to Lisa. "This is Tom Wilson," Helen said. "He's a social worker who specializes in emergency assistance. He's helped other people in situations like yours." Lisa looked at the card. It was simple and white with just a name and phone number. "Do you think he can help?" "I think he can at least try," Helen said. "But even if he can help with the money, Lisa, you need more support than just this one crisis. You need help getting back on your feet." Lisa nodded, though part of her just wanted to focus on saving Amy first and worry about everything else later. Helen walked Lisa to a quiet office and helped her call Tom. He answered on the second ring, and his voice was calm and professional. Helen explained the situation briefly, then handed the phone to Lisa. "Tell me what's happening," Tom said, and Lisa found herself telling her story again. But this time it felt different. Tom asked specific questions about Amy's condition, about the hospital's requirements, about what kind of help Lisa had already tried to find. "I can meet you at the hospital in an hour," Tom said. "I can't promise anything, but I have access to some emergency funds that might help." Lisa felt hope for the first time in weeks, but she was afraid to believe it. She had been disappointed too many times. Tom was waiting in the hospital lobby when Lisa arrived. He was younger than she expected, probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and a quiet way of speaking that made her feel safe. He didn't seem shocked by her appearance or uncomfortable talking to someone who was clearly homeless. They sat in the hospital cafeteria, and Tom asked Lisa more questions about her situation. He took notes on a small pad and seemed to be calculating numbers in his head. "I can cover the $300, he said finally. "The community center has an emergency fund for exactly this kind of situation." Lisa started crying right there in the crowded cafeteria. She had held herself together for so long, but hearing those words broke something open inside her. "But," Tom continued gently, "we need to talk about what happens after today. Your sister is going to need recovery time, and you're going to need a place to live and a way to support yourself." Lisa wiped her eyes with a napkin. "I just want to get through today first." Tom nodded. "Fair enough. Let's go pay for your sister's surgery." Amy's surgery went perfectly. Lisa sat in the waiting room for 4 hours, watching the clock and praying to anyone who might be listening. When the doctor came out with a smile on his face, Lisa felt like she could breathe again for the first time in months. Amy would be okay. Her little sister would live to finish college, become a nurse, and have the future they had always talked about. But as Amy recovered over the next few days, Lisa realized that Tom had been right. Saving her sister was just the beginning. Lisa still had nowhere to live, no job, and very few belongings. The relief of Amy's successful surgery was mixed with the reality that Lisa's problems were far from over. Tom visited Lisa at the hospital every day while Amy was recovering. He didn't push her to make decisions, but he talked to her about options. There were programs that could help her find temporary housing. There were job training programs for people who had been out of work for a while. There were support groups for people who had experienced homelessness. The hardest part, Tom explained, is that you have to be willing to accept help. A lot of people in your situation have never had to ask for assistance before. It can feel like giving up or admitting failure. Lisa understood what he meant. She had always been the helper, not the one being helped. Even as a child, she had taken care of Amy when their parents worked late. She had been the responsible one, the one who solved problems instead of creating them. On Amy's third day in the hospital, Tom took Lisa to see a transitional housing program across town. It was a large old house that had been converted into small apartments for women who were getting back on their feet. Each resident had her own tiny space with a bed, a dresser, and a small table. They shared bathrooms and a kitchen, and everyone was expected to follow rules about curfew, cleanliness, and job searching. The woman who ran the program was named Patricia, and she had been homeless herself 10 years earlier. She showed Lisa around the house and explained how the program worked. Residents could stay for up to 6 months while they looked for work and saved money for their own place. They had to attend weekly meetings about budgeting, job skills, and life planning. "It's not easy," Patricia said honestly. "Living with other people, following rules, having people check on your progress. But it works if you're willing to do the work." Lisa looked around at the small room Patricia showed her. It wasn't much, but it had a bed with clean sheets, a window that let in natural light, and a door that locked. After weeks of sleeping on benches and in shelters, it looked like luxury. She moved in the day Amy was discharged from the hospital. Amy went to stay with a friend from college who lived nearby, somewhere she could rest and recover without worrying about anything. For the first time in months, Lisa didn't have to worry about Amy's immediate safety and health. The transitional housing program was stricter than Lisa expected. She had to be in by 10 every night. She had to keep her space clean and contribute to household chores. She had to apply for at least 3 jobs every week and attend all the program meetings. But she also had her own space, regular meals, and access to a computer for job searching. Tom helped Lisa enroll in a program that trained people for medical office jobs. It was a 6-week course that taught basic computer skills, medical terminology, and office procedures. Lisa discovered she was good at organizing information and helping people navigate complicated systems. The instructor said she had a natural talent for explaining complex things in simple terms. While Lisa was in training, she also started volunteering at the community center where she had first met Helen. She helped serve meals to homeless people and listened to their stories. She began to understand that homelessness could happen to anyone, and that the people she had once avoided looking at were just regular people who had run out of options. The hardest part of recovery wasn't learning new job skills or following program rules. It was learning to forgive herself for the choices she had made during the worst times. Lisa had done things she never thought she would do, and the shame followed her even after her situation improved. Tom recommended that Lisa join a support group for people who had experienced homelessness. At first, she resisted. She didn't want to talk about that time in her life with strangers, but eventually she realized that keeping those experiences secret was making it harder to move forward. The support group met once a week in a circle of folding chairs at the community center. There were 8 regular members, men and women of different ages who had all been on the streets at some point. They talked about the practical challenges of rebuilding their lives, but they also talked about the emotional scars that homelessness leaves behind. Lisa learned that other people had made similar choices during their darkest times. She wasn't alone in feeling shame about what desperation had driven her to do. She also learned that healing meant accepting all parts of her story, not just the parts she was proud of. 6 months after Amy's surgery, Lisa graduated from the medical office training program, and got a job at a clinic that served low-income patients. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid enough to rent a small apartment. More importantly, it gave her a chance to help other people who were facing impossible situations with limited resources. Amy finished college and became a registered nurse, just like she had always planned. She never learned the full truth about what Lisa had sacrificed to save her life, but she knew her sister had given up everything to help her. The sisters were closer than ever, bonded by the knowledge that they would always be there for each other. Lisa kept volunteering at the community center and eventually became a peer counselor for other women experiencing homelessness. She never forgot the feeling of having nowhere to turn, and she made sure that anyone who walked through those doors knew they were not alone.